To this. Okay. All right, there we go. Welcome everybody to Long School of Medicine's Club Pre-Med web chat for the month, and we've got a great topic for you that I think is sort of under-resourced. So non-traditional pathways to medicine. We have some of our students here that are going to tell you about their pathways. We have a few really good questions for you or from you that we'll address also. I I think that this is of value to a lot of people. You know, once you're out of college, we'll talk about resources again later, but we want to be a resource for you. We have a very large and active non-traditional student organization, and part of their mission is to do outreach. And that's you. That's reaching out to you with your questions and about how to do this pathway in a non-traditional fashion. So I am going to introduce our students. There's Nicole Bartel, there's Catherine Danko, and Nicole is a rising 2, Catherine is a rising 3, Ryan Gallagher is here with us today, and he's a rising 2, and in a little bit it comes Lorenzo Canseco. I lost track. He could be even going into his senior year. So you've got a nice array of our students to tell you about their stories and things. So let's get started. Our plan today is for you to hear from each of our students, and then we'll dig into some questions and maybe wrap up with some advice that they have for you. Okay, so we'll start with Nicole. Thank you, Nicole.
Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us. I'm Nicole. So I have a super non-trad background. So I wanted a helping profession. I knew that's what I wanted, but I didn't know really what I wanted to go into. And I was choosing a profession and a major in college. And so I was between law and medicine and didn't really know which one to do. Didn't shadow either probably as much as I probably should have, and chose law and got on the law fast track. So I went to college. My degree is in government, graduated, went to law school. During law school, I realized, okay, I made the wrong choice. I didn't research either of these two things. I should have shadowed a little bit more. And I started shadowing again and figuring out like, okay, if I don't do law and I stop this, or I get my degree and then I don't practice law, what will I do with myself? So I shadowed lots of different professions, shadowed physicians, and fell in love with that and realized like, this is really where I belonged. And got out, graduated from law school. Then I took most of my prereq classes. That took me about 1.5 years or so to do. So I did a post-bac non-trad program. I just stayed where I was. And then after that, my grandmother got sick, and I'm an only child, and my mom is too. And so I moved back home. I had gotten into medical school, actually. That was 10 years ago. So I got into med school and had to make the really hard choice to put that aside for then. I put it aside for longer than I first expected to, because 10 years down the road, I had been doing real estate. I owned a couple of real estate businesses. That's what I did for the 10-year span. And so I needed to retake my MCAT and everything when I wanted to go back to medical school, because I could not get going to med school and being a physician out of my head. So that's my story, kind of short and sweet, but applied again, retook the MCAT, had to do some classes again to get all my prereqs in, and made it here, and very fortunate that I'm here. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Nicole. I jotted down some questions. I hope you all are keeping track. And I see Lorenzo has joined us. Thank you for being here, Lorenzo. And if you don't mind, do you want to go? I'm just going in alphabetical order. And I couldn't remember if you were a 3 or a 4. So time goes by too fast. Time goes by too fast. So I introduce you all to Lorenzo Canseco, a senior medical student here.
Hi, y'all. Thanks, Dr. K. And yeah, I was really excited to put MS4 because I just started my first sub internship on Monday, so it's exciting to finally be here. But yeah, so a little bit about me. I was born in Friendswood, Texas, which is a small town outside of Houston, and around the age of 12, my family and I, we moved to Colorado. and to a small town in the mountains called Steamboat Springs. And I went to high school there. And shortly after that, I went, typical route from high school to college. I went to the University of Colorado in Boulder. And to be completely honest, I showed up there honestly with very little intentions or even direction or drive of doing anything academic related at all. And that showed in my grades. And it didn't take long before eventually, like, my grades were bad. I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't actually doing much studying. And so I pretty quickly left there and decided, I needed a fresh start and I needed to do something different, because I, without that direction, without that drive, I wasn't heading anywhere too special. So I decided to pick up and I moved real quick and ended up in Austin, Texas. And the reason for that was because my family had also left Colorado. And so everyone ended up back in Texas and I was the only one left there. So I was like, well, I might as well go back too. I came to Austin in 2016 and I started originally, with nothing else to do, I started working in restaurants, so I worked at a few brunch restaurants in Austin, which was a good time, and I learned a lot there about like how to be a functioning adult, like paying my own bills, showing up to work on time, learning, how to just do a job and do it well. And showing up early. I had to show up at like 5 a.m., things like that. So that was really good for me. Did that for a couple years. And then I realized I wanted something else. And I'd always thought, I wanted to be in healthcare in some way. I remember like as a kid, my grandfather was a surgeon, but like I never got to meet him, but I knew that he was. And so it kind of was in my head, as a child, but I'd honestly sold myself short. I said, like, there's no way I'm capable of this. I failed out of college, like that. It would be impossible for me to do this at this point. And I was like, but, maybe I can go to EMT school, and so I did that. So I went to EMT school. I saved up the money, went to EMT school and, did that. And then I found out that nowhere really hires inexperienced EMTs to do 911. And I didn't want to do interfacility transfers. I just was not into it. And so I was like, well, I never thought about being a firefighter, but I guess the next step would be to do that because plenty of places hire firefighters without experience. And so I went to fire academy and I ended up getting a Texas commission for firefighting. And then I had my EMT. So I was licensed in the state. And so I started working at a couple different departments in Hays County, which is just north of San Antonio. Did that for a couple years, had some experiences dropping patients off at the hospital with the paramedics where I realized like, I was like, man, like this stuff is cool, but like the hospital is like, I mean, like we brought one patient, he was having a heart attack. We called a STEMI and a specific kind of heart attack. And we took him and I got to go into the cath lab, which is like an operating room for heart attacks pretty much, and see them do what they did in there. And I was like, this is where I'm supposed to be. Maybe not the cath lab, but I need to be in this room. I need to be in a room just like this with these kinds of people. And man, it must have been only a couple of weeks later that I quit my job and applied to go back to school. And I didn't even have a bachelor's degree, but I decided, I'm gonna go get that first because obviously I have to. And things happened pretty fast after that. I spent 2.5 years finishing up the credits I needed to get a bachelor's degree, and took the MCAT. And the rest kind of was history. That's how I ended up here. And so it's funny because the first time I tried college when I was 18 years old, it did not go well. And that's, at the time it felt like it was the end of the world that it didn't go well. And truly, and that's reasonable to feel that way. But now looking back on it, I can see like I didn't have the tools, I didn't have the maturity, I didn't have the mindset at that time. Some people do. I didn't. And that's totally okay. Because when I came back around to it, at the age of 27, a few years ago, when I came back around to it, everything was different. The skills I had learned by working in the field, by whether it was in the breakfast restaurants or whether it was as a firefighter or whatever I was doing, those all translated into the classroom and everything went so well. And today I'm really grateful for those experiences. I'm older than most of my peers in med school. And I'm going to be older when I graduate residency and older when I'm an attending and all this stuff. But it doesn't, I think my skills, it doesn't make me better than them, but it has given me a different perspective that I think has enabled me to do a really good job. And so I'm really grateful for all that. And that's kind of the journey. There's a way more to it than that, but told to keep it brief. So
We'll get into some details again in a little bit. Great. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, Catherine.
All
Thank
right.
you. Next.
Hi there. So I was a chemical engineering undergraduate a very long time ago. I graduated in 2005. So I was interested in medicine then. And in some ways, I was kind of a traditional student. I had gone into college right after high school. I had done some summer research projects that would have been good for a med school application. When given the option between, oh, you can take organic chemistry too, or you could take biochemistry, I would tend to take the ones that would be biology or medicine focused. But then when it came time to really decide, am I going to apply for med school when I'm a senior, I didn't think I could do it. And so there were a variety of reasons that kept me from doing it then, and I think they were valid. So not taking on so much debt was a big part of it. Knowing my grades weren't of the same caliber as some of the peers that were applying to medical school, knowing I hadn't done enough shadowing to be a good applicant, and also just not feeling emotionally ready to deal with some of the discussions that doctors have to have. All those things kind of combined to make me think this is not something I should do now. So I did, just regular workforce. I worked for 2 years at the Chemical Safety Board in DC, and then went to a very traditional engineering job with Fluor out of Sugar Land. I'm originally from Texas and then came back to work at Fluor. And then worked as an engineer for 15 years at Fluor. And a couple years before leaving Fluor is when I really started deciding, like, okay, I want to do medicine. How can I do that? And I think that what really kicked off the process for me was deciding that I was going to take the MCAT. I was going to take it. I signed up for it. I did the studying. I had also started volunteering at a Texas Children's Hospital again as part of a different organization I was involved in, Junior League of Houston, and being back in that environment also kind of kickstarted me into this idea of, you wanted to do this a long time ago. You've been thinking about it off and on. Every time the company would threaten layoffs, I would think, okay, well, if they lay me off, I can go do med school. And I just got tired of that mentality and kind of wanted to take it by the horns. And if this is what I'm going to do, I need to do it from a position of strength. So I did. I took the MCAT. I started talking with my undergraduate pre-med advising office as well, got advice from them, helped have them put together a committee letter. When it came time to, and I also retook an organic chemistry course through Minnesota State University Moorhead, where I did much better the second time around. Kind of like what Lorenzo said, the first time I took organic chemistry as a 19-year-old, it did not go well at all. The second time around, I took it when it was, okay, I'm working full time and I'm taking organic chemistry, but at least there was a different kind of focus, and I knew what I was in for, and I knew what I needed to do to get the score I needed. And it was just a very different course the second time around. And so that went fine. And so I had started to improve my application. I had done more volunteering. At that particular time, I was on an overseas assignment for work. And so I would have 6 weeks there working 60 hours a week and then come back for 2 weeks. And then I would try to really cram about a week of solid volunteering into there, mostly at Community Volunteers in Medicine, and then near Philadelphia, and then also at Project Cure in Houston, which my significant other was in Philadelphia, and I still had a home base in Houston. So that first application cycle in 2019 did not go well. I mean, it went well in the sense of it had motivated me to get some of the things in place that I needed to get done. It got me to get the connections with volunteering that I could then build on in a later application, but I didn't get any interviews the first time around. And I was also only able to apply through AMCAS, the national system, rather than through TMD SAS, because I didn't have a Texas-specific biology lab or a Texas-specific statistics course. I had taken, differential equations, not done super great, but I had taken it, but that was not statistics. And a pharmaceutical lab also was not a bio lab. So that second time around for the application cycle, I actually took some time off work, not fully separated, but it was during COVID. So they were actually quite happy that I was happy to kind of take a few months off work when they didn't have enough work coming in. And so I said, okay, I'm just going to take this time. I'm going to do a certificate program. Don't worry about me. Let me, know when I need to come back to work. Otherwise, I'm just going to use up some of this time off with pay that I've built up over the last 15 years. All good. And so I started the post-bac program through Temple University, and I also started taking some classes through Rice, a ecology lab that counted for the Texas Bio Lab, and a statistics course that counted. And so that second time around, I was able to apply TMD-SAS and AMCAS. And again, AMCAS got me no interviews, and I got a number of interviews in Texas. So I think I'm a real beneficiary of the Texas policy of we want people from Texas to stay in Texas. So I did not make it in off the match in April on my second application cycle, which was pretty devastating. But at this point, I knew, okay, well, I'll start another application. What can I do to improve this time? Well, maybe I'll take an EMT course. Started signing up for that. And then actually I managed to get it off the wait list into long on May 20th. And then I was able to abandon my third application and ignore it. And I was very happy to do that. I did actually finish the EMT class I had started because I have a ridiculous persistent personality, I guess, which serves me well in some circumstances and very poorly in others. But I made it in off the wait list. And it was actually very amusing because I became then an even more non-traditional student because I made it in off the wait list about 3 hours after I had gotten married to my significant other. And he was able to relocate to San Antonio with his employer. And then a few months after he relocated around Thanksgiving of my first year, his company closed the office. So he was very, very fortunate to be able to continue working as a remote worker. So he now works from home in his computer job. And so that's great. And I became an even more non-traditional student because we had our son Bradley in the second semester of my first year. So now I hit a whole bunch of the non-traditional boxes, and that, previous career, married, have a kid. So I'm here for whatever questions you have.
Very good. Very good. I'll have some for you later. I see one in the chat, but let's go ahead and get all of the stories out, and then we'll back up, Satya, if that's okay with you. Okay. We see it. Thanks for recording your questions. Please, I didn't say this earlier, please feel free to use emojis, and I do have the Q&A box open, and feel free to use the chat as well. Okay, Ryan Gallagher, you are up next. Thank you for being here.
All right, how's it going, y'all? My name's Ryan. I am also clearly non-traditional. My story actually mirrors Lorenzo's a little well. I'm lucky you get to hear from two former firefighters. When I went to college at 18 with zero clue of what I wanted to do, I had no problems in high school, was a good student in high school. I went to a Catholic school, so it was rather rigorous, but just didn't really have any direction and could not really envision what life would be like post-college. And I just wasn't good at handling work and school, and my transcript was horrendous. I also, at that point, did not ask for help when I needed it. I was very stubborn and I'm just going to get what I deserve rather than, withdraw from a semester or something like that. So I have a significant amount of terrible grades on that transcript. I went to UT Austin. It was a good time. Got kicked out for grades for a semester, asked to leave, and went back home to Fort Worth and just worked for a little bit. Came back and I took a couple actually classes at the local community college, just fun ones like a horticulture class, a creative writing class, just stuff that I wanted to do. And I guess I had my mother also saying you're not going to finish college, blah, 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 which she knows how to motivate me. Telling me I'm not going to do something always is something that works well to get me to do it. So I ended up moving back to UT Austin and finished the spring semester and 2 summer semesters before I graduated, and had no problems with grades. It was just a switch had flipped, and I was just able to work, able to go to school and focus and do what I needed to do. But it wasn't until my last class at UT Austin, which was physical anthropology, that I kind of started thinking about science in general and was like, I should have probably done something along those lines. Like I enjoy helping people. I like science, like what could combine those things? So it was only at that point that I thought medical school. But when you graduate with like I think I had a 2.0, 2.1 GPA, and this was in 2005, you're not getting into medical school at that time. But in Texas, they have something called Academic Fresh Start, which is a program you can apply to. You have to wait 10 years, and then you can apply for this program and start taking more classes. And it eliminates all of your grades 10 years prior. So there, it's something unique to Texas, as far as I know. I don't know other states that do it. AMCAS certainly doesn't apply that criteria, but it's kind of just a second chance, which is awesome. So after I graduated, I got a job as an air conditioning assistant. And I really love that, like the mission-based work. Like somebody calls, you have a problem, you go diagnose it, you figure it out, and take care of it. I enjoyed that thoroughly. And I started taking all the medical school prereqs at that time, and just at local community college. And then I decided I should probably get a job in healthcare just to make sure that it was something I was interested in. So I got hired at UT Southwestern in the general surgery clinic, and just as a like a front desk person. And I made friends with some of the surgeons in the clinic, and one of them hired me as her research assistant. And so I started doing research in bariatric surgery for 3 or 4 years after that. Again, I was finishing up all the prereqs. I also got married at that point. And then so I took the MCAT and I applied back in 2007. But even with all that the extra prereqs at a near 4.0 GPA, it wasn't enough to lift my overall GPA up, but to like a 3, I think. So still kind of unacceptable. And my MCAT score, it was the old MCAT. It was acceptable, but it was nothing spectacular. So that coupled with, you know, an okay MCAT and a 3.0 GPA, and nothing happened, and rightly so. So, and then actually in the midst of all that, I got divorced. So that was another like life experience, just all this stuff kind of forcing growth, I guess. And in the meantime, one of my friends suggested, well, why don't you go be a firefighter? Like it combines the science, it combines like the mission-based work, and it's a fun job. So I went to EMT school, and then I went to paramedic school while I was working at UT Southwestern, and was in class with a bunch of firefighters, and they also encouraged it. So I applied to Fort Worth and lucked out getting in there. And so I worked there for probably 5 or 6 years before I met my current wife, and was telling her that, you know, I'd always had this idea of going to medical school after I kind of told her my whole story. And she was very encouraging, and she was like, look, whatever you need to do, like, let's do it. Go back to school, give it a shot. So I applied for the Academic Fresh Start. I made good friends with my pre-med advisor at UT Arlington. And I checked in with her every semester. And I told her my plan was just to get a whole nother degree. And she kind of told me that was overkill and not necessary. But given my age, I wanted to make it very clear that I was willing to do whatever it took to get in. So I just went ahead and went along with the full degree plan. But so I was working the 24-hour shifts. I was taking 15 to 19 hours of school a semester. I volunteered a bunch. I just try to embrace the whole like pre-med lifestyle, and really make sure that it was for me. And in the interim, you know, those 10 plus years before I did this, life, like all the life lessons I learned kind of just built me into somebody that could handle all of these things at this point. So I got my degree, took the MCAT again, studied very hard for it, and did well. And then I did the application cycle, and Long was just literally the perfect school for me. It was my last interview, but it felt like a great match. And so it was not a difficult decision at all. But yeah, that's kind of all I've got. And I also had children in the meantime too. So I think I'm the oldest one in my class. I'm turned 42 this year. So little old. And then when I was studying for my MCAT, I turned 40 and would not even let my wife let us celebrate. So I'm like, it's this month, I've got to buckle down. So in retrospect, maybe not the greatest idea, but it is what it is.
Well, all stories of success, great challenges and wonderful successes in the long run, right? So thank you so much. Thank you all for sharing all of those stories. They're inspirational. Um, what should we do now? How about some questions? Let's address the chat. I know Catherine, you had one. Did you answer it already in the chat as a Mary Ann's?
I had
That close?
answered the one about how you can, yeah, there's a section on TMD/SAS where you can talk about your non-traditionality, and also how it did play a role in my personal statement. And then the next question was about volunteer time. And I think that for MCAT, it was roughly 7 months of prep when I was working full time. So that was, intermediate, I might, on my lunch break, I would maybe listen to a podcast while walking outside and do practice problems in the evening, things like that. And then when it came for volunteering, that's what I was looking up and trying to pull together from my old applications. But I know it was 36 hours at Texas Children's. And then it's always difficult with some of them because you're supposed to put in estimates for like, okay, well, I've done this much and I think I'll do this much by the time I start med school. So I think, let's say on the order of like 150, 200 with community volunteers in medicine. And then I know something like probably like 50 or so with Project Cure. And that's just for the medically related ones. I also had a few things that were very non-medically related that I could pull from during the, many years that I'd been out of school. I had been in a community orchestra. I had been on my homeowners association. Don't kill me. I'm sorry. But, so there were various other volunteers in like on the board of my rowing club. So there were various things that I had volunteered in that I could show like, hey, I'm an active member of my community, but they just weren't medically related. And recently I was asked, is there anything you would have done differently? And at the time I said, oh, I would have started earlier. And then in retrospect, it's like, it's not necessarily that I would have started earlier. Like, I feel like I'm in a good place now. I'm happy with where things ended up. But I think what I might have started earlier is getting that medically related volunteer time and that clinical time that was really kind of hard to get while working. If I had started doing that a couple years earlier, I think it might have accelerated my decision, and it also would have made my first application cycle possibly go a lot better. So I think that starting that volunteer thing would have been very helpful. But
Great.
so
Thank you
I
so
hope that's
much.
enough without
Yeah.
these specific numbers.
Yeah, and there's a good question we'll get to later that people wrote ahead of time. Several people, Umberto writes this question, and several people went on the registration had asked this, and I think that this is an important thing. So let's go down the row. The question is basically like, how am I going to do this when I have to support myself and or a family? How do you make this happen? So let's go down the row, and the short answer is I think it takes a longer time because you have responsibilities, and to do anything like to tackle the MCAT when you work full time is difficult, but obviously can be done. So Nicole, we'll start with you and then pass it down the row, please.
Sounds good. Yeah, I think give yourself some time and give yourself some grace, because you're going to have other things in your life that you didn't have maybe if you would have done all this when you were younger, and that's okay. And that makes you you as well. And I think that when you interview, everyone is very understanding of that as well, because like for me, I started studying for the MCAT and I probably did that for 2 or 3 months. And then when we owned real estate businesses, some of that started taking more of my time, and I had to just stop studying for the MCAT for a little bit. And then I picked that up about a year later. So that also delayed my cycle. I saw that Ryan said he delayed a cycle. but that's okay. And you'll just figure it out. Like your road is not going to look like someone else's road. And I would encourage you like not to try to compare yourself with other applicants either, especially those people that are younger or a more traditional role, because you're not going to have the same path as them. And that is the good thing. Don't look at it as a bad thing. That's a good thing that you have something different. So just be patient with yourself. And also, I think for me, it helps to have a supportive family and to have a supportive spouse, because like my husband, like Ryan said, like he had a cheerleader at home too for him, you know, and I feel like I have a good cheerleader husband for me too sometimes when I need it and I need to pick me up, or like he'll do more things around the house because I'm trying to get things done. So that helps as well.
Very good. Thank you. Lorenzo.
Yeah, I would definitely echo what's been said so far, especially what Nicole said. I mean, I think patience, you know, there's like a saying, it's like people who get really far in life do a little bit every day, not a lot, like all at once, you know, or something like that. And I really do think it's those daily habits and the daily discipline, a little bit over a long time that gets you places. I got uninvited once from a mentorship thing because one of the undergrad students asked me, they're like, oh, I'm having trouble getting enough hours and this and that. What should I do? And I was like, take a year off. And so they lectured me afterwards. They're like, they're not trying to hear that here. And I was like, okay, sorry, you know, but it truly is. It's like, it's one of those things where, you know, all of our situations are so different. I don't have children, you know, and I had a really supportive family that was able to help me though. And, you know, with time things and other things as well. And like, I think that, relying on those around you, if you don't have those around you, then it's just you know, and then in that case, use the time at your hands, do it once, do it right. Don't rush into things. It will pay off with that mentality, I think. And in terms of just like the daily, like things on like a daily thing, if I had to say just one thing, like I really think that discipline is one of those things, like if you start early, like it'll carry you so far in life. And just like really getting good at like saying, sorry, I can't come, and like really believing in yourself and your journey. And no matter how lonely it gets or how quiet it gets or any boring or whatever it is, it's like you eventually begin to like take comfort in where you're headed and like the faith that you have and where you will end up. And I think that that'll get you really far. At least it gets me far. I thrive on that now. So
I think that's all good advice, even the one that got you kicked off that mentoring thing. Gosh. You know, I think one thing, I'm going to go to Catherine and Ryan for their answers about when you have to work, how do you do this? But I think once you have that flame and it's lit, and it becomes a calling. It's a very deeply meaningful thing, and you just want it to happen. We see this all the time with non-traditional people, but also with, you know, traditional. Oh my God. And that's why I think, you know, the obstacles, the detours that you have to take along the way are just like devastating sometimes, because you want to fulfill that passion, you want to fulfill that that calling. So yeah, but those are all good lessons, right? Like to pull back, work day by day on what you need to do. Catherine, what would you say?
For the balancing work and med school application,
How do you
for
do,
me,
yeah, how do you do like just so much? Anything else to add?
well, one thing I think that was good about my job is my previous job in engineering, once I left the office, it was done. So I could spend the evenings however I wanted to. And so, no, I didn't watch Netflix. I feel like it has been years since I have gotten to go on good book binges. So there've definitely been things I've had to say no to in order to focus on what I need to focus on. And then with work, I could, you know, leave it at the door, go home, do my other preparation, repeat. And it actually did help, I think, a little bit. I was on an overseas assignment for some time with work, and there was nobody I knew really in the country other than the people I worked with. And so there was a lot fewer distractions, and I didn't have to maintain my house. I didn't have to maintain my yard. So many things kind of dwindled away when I did that overseas assignment. It helped me prepare for the MCAT. As for now, balancing more family and school, I try to cherry pick opportunities that are right for me. So I am not the kind of person who's going to sign up for a kind of ill-defined research project that may or may not happen. But I did sign up to help the trauma research group with an existing database that they don't have enough people to get everything filled in. Anytime that they can have other students come in and help on it, they're welcome to that. So that's the kind of opportunity I joined. I specifically told the non-traditional students group, no, I do not want to be president my second year because I will have an infant. And so there have certainly been things that I've, as was previously mentioned, said no to. But I also will try to find volunteer opportunities that work with my family. So sometimes the admissions office has had non-traditional panels, and then gotten my husband and kid to come. There was like a junior high event where they needed people to walk the junior high kids from the front entryway to the auditorium. And so Radley, at the time he was probably 10 months old, and I volunteered for that and walked back and forth. So I just try to find and also a lot of Zoom calls. I will oftentimes have Radley present. If it's after 5 o'clock and daycare is closed, that means Radley's invited. And for currently, I kind of feel like my best work gets done about 9 to 4. And then I have to kind of go home, prepare, get Radley, and then I might get a little bit more work done after he goes to bed. But my day is definitely more of a traditional work day than what a lot of my classmates are able to do. And sometimes it's really frustrating because I want to be able to go into that mode where in the past, I've been able to do that. You just study, 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 but I can't do that anymore. So I have to make do with what I have. Some of my classmates, one of my classmates especially, is a really good library study buddy. And both she and I feel we're more efficient when we're sitting at the same table, not necessarily talking to one another, but we're both there, we're both on our computers, we're both doing work. And so, you'll find people who work well for you. And there are other people who aren't great study partners, and then to kind of avoid them. If they're going to get off topic, okay, well, I'm only here till 4, so we have to focus.
Yeah. There's that time management, discipline, focus, lay out a good plan, and then have the discipline to execute it. Ryan, do you have anything to add to all this?
Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
My life, I would argue, is rather chaotic. I have 3 children. They're 4, 2, and 1. My wife is a nurse practitioner and she's the breadwinner. Thankfully, I'm very grateful for that. But that means that I'm in charge of getting the kids up in the morning, making their lunches. I take them to daycare and then I go to school. And then usually I'm the one that picks them up. And then I oftentimes am the one that makes dinner. So I do have to be efficient with the time that I have, like Catherine was mentioning. So again, similar to work hours, that's usually my efficient time too. And then after I put them to bed, I usually try and cram a little bit more studying in. There's not a lot of time for like myself, personal things, but I mean, that's okay. That's just life. It's gonna ebb and flow as far as when you get to do stuff for you. And then on the weekends, it's kind of a mixed bag. I take care of the kids a lot. And again, just kind of plug in studying when I can get there. It seemed to be a little less chaotic during undergrad. But like Dr. K was saying, time management just had to be so tight and efficient. And I also have had to resign myself. I'm not going to be top of the class. That's not going to happen. I'm literally doing the best I can with what I've got. And that's kind of an important thing to embrace as well, I think.
Here's the way we look at it though. It's not like this. I mean, in some little corner, it might be like this, but we see it like all of these exceptional physicians. That's what we see. You don't have to be the top of your class. You need to listen to what we're telling you and be exceptional like we're teaching you. Good, thank you. I will confess that sometimes I will tell people, if you could get healthcare related job or something that gets you a little bit closer to caring for people in some way, do scribing. Scribing is the thing that comes out of my mouth, but I don't think that supports a person well, or a family, right? So now I think I'll start asking people to look into the firefighter route. Julian, I don't like to point out, well, sometimes I do. Are you in a healthcare related, I'm just gonna call you out on this. You have a uniform, I can tell what your badge is. I see Texas and swirling. Are those fires out there?
Yeah, I'm fire and EMS. I'm local to San Antonio. I work at a fire department. I'm the EMS division chief.
Okay,
But specifically right now, I'm activated through the Texas Emergency Medical Task Force at the State Operations Center for the storms, historic flooding that passed through last week, and
yeah,
the storms we're expecting tonight. So that's why there's all this flare in the background. I'm not at my home base. I'm in College Station at the State Incident Command Center.
yes, great, thank you. Okay, somebody asked about letters of, there's some things in the chat that I think when we do post this online, people aren't gonna see. So we need to pull some of these out of the chat. And letters of recommendation from the admission standpoint, and then I'll let yeah, people say a little something. We need people, this is like the first thing we tell you to do. This is what you know already, is find somebody who knows you well. And yeah, they might not be a doctor. Your letters do not have to be from physicians by any means, but we're looking in those letters for personal attributes. How were you on the team? How were you as an employee? What are your responsibilities, and fulfilling the responsibilities, and doing more than expected, or learning more than expected, are all things that we're looking for in a strong letter, in a person who's had a non-traditional path. Anybody else want to say something? No family members, really. No little league coach, unless that's a job of yours, so those kind of things. Anybody else want to add anything about, I see that question about letters?
I'd like to, oh, just one thing I would just like to say, like when you talk to a letter writer, because I'm about to start working on letter stuff for residency, and like something that I was reminded of is like, don't just ask them for a letter, because they don't know, even if they know what it's for, like they might just be like, okay, and they'll be like, I worked with this person from these dates to these dates, blah blah blah, and you can't see the letter, so you'll never know. And if that ends up on the desk of Dr. K, it's like it's not useful, and so like I would say, like, ask for say, hey, would you be willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation that discusses the things that Dr. K just mentioned? And if they say no, then or they say, well, there's some things I want to see you improve on. That's totally fine. Or like, work with them on it. You know what I mean? Because like sometimes they might say, I honestly don't know you well enough, and she just posted some awesome stuff. I'm sure it's going to be great stuff right there, but just make sure you ask for a strong letter, not just a letter.
Yes. Yes, and that's in that. I put a couple of documents in the chat for you. One is about letters of recommendation and the how-to. That's the first thing you should ask is, could you write me? Do you feel comfortable writing me a strong letter? And I've had like great people. I know they're great, but I don't know you that well, and you've got better others, who can help you there. So take a look at that and give them resources, give them respectfully recognizing that they've got a whole bunch of stuff to do. You might tell them what your personal deadlines are and that kind of thing. It's all in the document. And for you online, we'll post it. We'll post it with the video. And then there's more on non-traditional, just some details about non-traditional routes to medical school. I saw other questions, but y'all can always unmute. So Sasaya, are you still with us? You asked, is it ethical to ask a mentor? So interesting choice of words, and it gives me a chance to say the ethics of letter writing. I think this is mentioned in my document in there. It would not be right if somebody, you say, can you write me a strong letter? And they say to you, would you go ahead and draft it? Okay, so I don't think that that's right. I don't think that that's right. So I think it would be perfectly ethical and fine for you to ask somebody who's working. And I can understand maybe that person is in a place where it might look like a conflict of interest or anything, but everybody's, pretty much ethical and fair. And I think that that's a perfectly fine thing. And it sounds like somebody knows you well. So what other questions do you all have? Nicole had one academic letter, one volunteer organization, and then a medical volunteering. That's good. So while new questions are coming, I want to say that, and I would like our students to endorse it or add or edit what I'm going to say. You really, while this is for career changers, you've been out for a while, living life, supporting yourself and a family. Like, what do you pick? And how do you decide what activities to do? And I would say that the things like healthcare and volunteering are at the top. We don't ask you to do these things because we need you to check them off a list. We ask you to do them because we want you to know about healthcare. We're looking for people who have a heart of service and want to serve others and make others' lives better. So you ought to be doing something in those areas, because those are the big ones. And so if you've been working and there's nothing to put in those sections, that's gonna cause us a little pause. And what I always throw out there, like over and over again, I throw out there, I don't know if any of y'all did this, but big brothers, big sisters. You need to be 18, I think. You need to try to commit for about a year. These are the requirements. And you need to be able to do one thing a month. One thing, one pizza parlor, one ice cream thing, one Disney movie, a month with a child. They teach you how to be a mentor. And they find kids who are in need of some influence, some good influence in their world. Maybe, mom and or dad are working 3 jobs, and they just, need to know that, college is important and schooling is important, and have dreams, because you can do anything. Anyway, so I throw that out there a lot. I think that you can make also, in terms of activities, I think you can make things happen virtually and find meaning in things. So you might not have time to go out and use other people's time constraints, but you can do crisis text line or something that's online. I don't know, what other ideas do y'all have? We've even had people who had, family and kids who then took their kids with their big brother, with their little, to the ice cream parlor or to the monthly activity. And I thought that was really neat. And did I say this already? Because one of you mentioned sacrifice, and it's all a sacrifice. And if you aren't expecting to sacrifice, then you need to rethink or kind of expand I don't mean this offensive, it's sounding offensive, but the whole thing is a sacrifice. You are sacrificing yourself and your time and the time that you could have, going windsurfing or something, to help another person. So that's a big one. That was a big message from one of you as well. What else? Are there new things popping up?
Dr. K, what about hospice? I feel like I volunteered with hospice, and like once you meet your person or people, however many people you get hooked up with, a lot of times the hospice organization I had, they allowed phone calls, and that's such a nice thing for some of these patients.
Yeah.
It's a way for you. You don't have to be there in person, but it's just nice to talk to people.
Yeah, it's very valuable. And those things you're sacrificing, whether, it's a 30-minute phone call or you have a few people that you're in touch with, that's a sacrifice of your time. It's a human connection. It's what I call heart to heart and hand to hand. And that's very valuable in from the admissions point of view. Good, thank you. Anybody else want to add anything? Any other thoughts come to mind?
I'll say one thing. Use your resources and like the people that you know, and don't be afraid to ask, because especially, if you're non-traditional, you probably have connections that other people don't have. like use those and ask for opportunities if you need some volunteering or something. Ask your physician when you go see them, like that's okay to do. I ask everyone that I ever could see, or like someone at HEB, like, hey, I'm thinking about going to medical school. Can I come shadow you? Or do you think I can volunteer with whatever it is? So just be willing to ask everyone, because the worst thing that they can say is no, and the best thing they can say is yes. So you're not out anything by asking for opportunities.
Very good. Thank you so much. Very true.
For-
And on those other web chats from the past, about shadowing and how to get healthcare experience, that's what you have to do. Cold call, cold email, reach out. So, Lauren had a good one. I wrote, very good question, because it comes up a lot. And you want a happy reader of your personal statement. You want your admissions people who are reading through your application to have a happy, positive experience. And sometimes we can get bogged down in personal statements and essays. That's on the other video. But for your personal biography, that list of all the activities that you're doing so much. You've been out of school for a decade or something, so you're doing so much. It can bog us down. Where's Lauren? Yeah, it can get us sort of bogged down in, okay, like, I don't know anything about this business that you're in. I don't know anything much about this career that you've had. I'm not exactly sure what this collaborative effort was. I'm not exactly sure what this leadership thing is. And if there are pages, excuse me, the typical application turns out to be about 25, screen pages, as we scroll through a PDF. And non-traditional people can generate twice that easily. Okay. And so it goes like, so what happens when it's not curated for us is we're scrolling through all of those things. I'm looking for things that I think are high value. Okay. Which we can talk about high value, because that can be arbitrary, right? But so I'm looking for things that I recognize as, sacrificing your time or getting that healthcare experience, or honing leadership skills and those kinds of things. That said, I think you could look at your array of experiences, and we'll ask the students if they have any experience with this, and kind of curate them. Okay, these all really, I'm going to just put all these under one thing, under and you don't have to put like general leadership. You could make it a spiffy title of some sort, my leadership growth. And then talk about in those, I think you get a few more characters now. I think it's like 500 for those. It's grown. I know, right? Not fair, huh, Lorenzo? I'm sure y'all had a lot more to say. So it's expanded now. And talk about those things in a general kind of way. Big things you're going to pull out for one of the essays. Okay. So I think that there are ways to do that. Do you all have experience? And those in
It's been a while since it's been 4 years since I've done that, but I will say, telling a story and getting it, and someone said, how can I revamp if I have to revamp because I'm a reapplicant, like, blah blah blah, like so on and so forth. And I'm like, I think all of it is about a story. And for me, at least, that's the way I took it. And so I wrote the way I described everything, and the way that I wrote my essays and everything was tailored towards this whole, because I was like really big in teaching and mentorship, and like I taught in the fire academy, I taught EMT students. I love teaching. Not everyone likes teaching. I love it. That's my thing. And so I was like, how do I build an application around like being so passionate that I've made this like an integral part of my life, and I'm going to do it forever. And so everything I did kind of was tailored around that. And I think that shone through, because it created this like great talking point in all my interviews and all this stuff. And so I think like if you, and I just take this with a grain of salt because I'm not an adcom person, but I think if you were to revamp, try to tell a new story. Don't just say the same story with a couple new experiences.
And Sasaya, I think that's your answer to your question. How do I make it look like I'm not just checking the boxes. And that's how you do it. You like bring out, and somebody does ask, how do I stand out? Well, come to June 11th. The next web chat is about personal growth plan. And I think, and Lorenzo's said it very nicely. You pick out your passions. Within this passion to do medicine, you find the things that are your strengths, and tell us that story. Okay. And we'll talk about that some more on June 11th. That's the next thing. I think we should, like, we could talk forever, and we could, but we're gonna wrap it up for everybody's to be respectful of everybody's time. And we're gonna go down the list again, and I would love for our students to just give us one brief piece of advice in closing. And any question, please hit save the chat so you've got that chat, and any questions remaining, you can always email us. I think most of you know where to find us at Long School of Medicine, long SOM at uthscsa.edu. So, okay, where's my alphabetical order? Nicole, final piece of advice.
If you guys are committed to being physicians and going to medical school, just hang in there. Just know that that's what you're shooting for, and just hold on to that one thought, whatever it is that you're doing this for, or whatever, why you want to go to medical school and be a physician. Hold on to that, and we'll make everything else better in the hard days, in the hard decisions, and giving up a year or two to do these things, or pushing out your timeline will all make sense if you just believe in the one thing that you are doing this for. So just give yourself some time to do it, and love what you're doing.
Great, thank you. Lorenzo.
Yeah. Lots of people graduate undergrad. Less people go to med school, and even less people are able to match into their desired specialty, right? It's a bottleneck at every stage. I think in my experience, the people that go the farthest are the ones that are comfortable being uncomfortable. And more than just that, they thrive in it. And if you're not good at that, that's okay, because you can teach someone how to do that. Because I was not good at it, and I became better at it. So if you struggle with that, force yourself to be uncomfortable in every area of your life, whether it's with fitness, nutrition, education, in your workplace, whatever it may be. Get uncomfortable and get used to it, because the journey is not comfortable, but it is so rewarding. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Catherine?
I'm trying to think of something to say, and I think that for me, it was important that I kind of keep my foot in my old career before the new one started. And I know that that might not work well for everyone, but for me, it was what I needed to be able to like make the switch, and also everything I was doing for medical school, if I hadn't gotten into medical school, it would have gotten me onto the biotech projects that I'd wanted to get on, but hadn't been able to get onto. So even if med school hadn't worked out the second or third time, I would have at least have then been able to work in the biotech area that I was thinking would be a good backup plan. So I would say aim high, but don't burn your bridges and have plan Bs, and live your life, be happy, do what you can do within your abilities and what's possible.
Great, thank you. Okay, Ryan.
And then I guess what I've got for y'all is just keep at it. I know that it can seem like a really long road, like Nicola said, and then once you're in, it's still a long road, but getting there is kind of one of the really hard parts. And a lot of times as a non-traditional student, when you're doing things, especially if you're a little older, and people ask, oh, what are you doing? What are your plans? And you tell them, oh, I'm trying to get into medical school. You'll get like the sideways head tilt, though, like, oh, that's nice. And a lot of people don't believe that you can do it, because I mean, the odds are it is very difficult, but keep your chin up, keep working at it. And, like everyone else said, if you need to delay, whatever, just take your time, you can get there.
Yeah, that's great. Every day, do something every day. I like that. I have said before, don't just go day to day, but grow into this. every day do something. All right. So with that, we will close. Thank you so much for being here. To our guests, thank you so much. And for our medical students, y'all are awesome. Y'all are the best. Thank you so much. I think that everybody here and everybody who watches, who couldn't come today, who watches online is going to find some great, not just advice, but inspiration too. It's so good to know that, you know, everybody's path is a little different. Sometimes it's longer and harder, but you can do it. So thank you all for being here, and we'll say bye. Oh, but you know what we forgot to do in the beginning too is if everybody will please unmute so we can hear human voices when we say goodbye. That'd be nice. Okay, see ya.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
You too.
Bye.
You're welcome.
Luck,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you for
you.
being here. Bye-bye now.